In 2008, the city of Chicago was broke, so it did something no major American city had done before. It sold every single parking meter it owned. Not for a year, not for 10 years, for 75 years. 36,000 meters, one deal. And by the time the ink was dry, a group of private investors had bought the right to charge you for parking on a public street until the year 2084. Here's the part that should bother you. Those investors made their money back in about a decade. Everything after that is profit, and there's roughly 60 years left on the clock. That deal is the clearest window into something most people never think about. The parking meter is not a piece of street furniture. It's a revenue instrument. And the business behind it is far bigger than the coins you put in it. This is curbside economics. To understand the business, you have to understand what the meter was actually invented to do, because it wasn't to make money. Oklahoma City, 1935. Downtown had a problem. Shop owners and their employees would park in front of their own stores at 8 in the morning and leave their cars there all day. Every prime spot on the main commercial street was occupied by someone who wasn't shopping. Customers would circle the block, find nothing, and drive home. A newspaperman named Carl Maggi chaired a committee on the problem. His solution was a device that charged for time, not because the city wanted the nickel, because a price on time forces cars to leave. This is the single most important idea in the entire parking business, and almost nobody knows it. The meter's original purpose was turnover. Get the car out, free the space, let the next customer in. The first meters went in on July 16, 1935. Retailers on the street loved it, foot traffic went up, drivers hated it, some sued, but the cities noticed something Maggi hadn't emphasized: the nickels added up. Within 5 years, meters had spread to hundreds of American cities. And the reason they spread wasn't turnover. It was that a parking meter is one of the only pieces of municipal infrastructure that generates cash instead of consuming it. So let's look at the actual economics of a single parking space. Take a metered spot in a mid-sized American downtown. Say it charges $2 an hour, enforced 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. If that space were occupied every single enforced hour, it would generate about $6,000 a year. It never is. Real occupancy on a metered street runs somewhere between 40 and 70% depending on the block, so call it $2,000 to $4,000 a year from the meter itself. Now the costs: the meter hardware, payment processing, maintenance, coin collection if it still takes coins, software licensing on modern units. A modern multi-space kiosk costs several $1,000s up front and carries ongoing fees. A single-space smart meter is cheaper, but there are far more of them. Run those numbers and the meter revenue alone is a thin business. Real but thin. Which brings us to where the money actually is. Enforcement. A parking ticket in a typical American city runs somewhere between $25 and $80. In dense cities higher, one ticket can equal 10 to 40 hours of legitimate meter payment from that same space. Think about what that means structurally. The meter is not primarily the product. The meter is the mechanism that creates a violation, and the violation is the high-margin item. This is why cities that install meters almost always expand enforcement at the same time. The two are a single system. And it's why parking fine revenue in large cities routinely runs into the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a year, dwarfing what the meters themselves collect. Here's the uncomfortable consequence. Once a city's budget depends on that number, the incentive quietly flips. Maggi's meter was designed to make you leave. A revenue-dependent meter system is designed for you to overstay, which is exactly the pressure that produced Chicago, the financial crisis. Chicago is facing a severe budget shortfall and needs cash immediately. An investor group led by Morgan Stanley offers the city just over $1 billion, paid up front, in exchange for the revenue from the city's parking meters for 75 years. The city council approved it in about 2 days. Most aldermen had barely read it. The city took the money. It used a large portion to plug immediate budget holes, which is to say, it spent 75 years of future revenue on a few years of present expenses. Chicago's own inspector general later reviewed the deal and concluded the meters had been sold for far less than they were worth. The estimate was short by roughly $1 billion, but the price wasn't even the worst part. The contract was, because a lease like this doesn't just transfer coins, it transfers control of the street. The agreement included what are sometimes called true-up provisions. If the city takes a metered space out of service, it has to compensate the private operator for the lost revenue. Close a street for a festival, pay. Build a bike lane where meters used to be, pay. Remove a space for a bus stop, pay. Emergency repairs that block a block of meters, pay. Chicago has paid out tens of millions of dollars in these compensation claims since the deal was signed. Think about what that does to city planning. Every proposal to redesign a street now carries an invoice attached to it. A city that wants to add a protected bike lane isn't just weighing traffic and safety anymore. It's weighing a payment to a private investor. Meanwhile, rates went up sharply. Enforcement hours were extended. The meters got a lot better at making money because for the first time, making money was the entire point. The investors recovered their $1 billion outlay in roughly a decade. The contract runs to 2084, so who actually holds these assets? Not for the most part parking companies, infrastructure funds. These are investment vehicles, often backed by pension funds and sovereign wealth funds that specialize in buying long-duration assets with predictable cash flows. Toll roads, airports, water utilities, ports, and parking. Parking is attractive to them for a specific set of reasons. Demand is inelastic. People who need to park downtown mostly still park downtown when the price goes up. There's no competition. Nobody can build a competing curb next to yours. Revenue is tied to inflation through rate escalation clauses. And the contract term is measured in decades, not quarters. That's close to a perfect asset. Monopoly position, captive demand, inflation protection, 75-year horizon. The modern industry is layered. The fund owns the concession. An operator runs the day-to-day. A technology vendor supplies the meters and the app. Each layer takes a cut. And on top of it, a payment app you've probably used takes a convenience fee of 35 cents or so on every transaction. That fee sounds trivial. Multiply it by tens of millions of transactions a year. Most cities haven't sold their meters outright. Chicago is the extreme case. But the softer version, outsourced operations, revenue share contracts, app partnerships, is now common. The direction is consistent. The curb is being converted from public space into a managed revenue stream. Here's what I keep coming back to. The land under a parking space is public, you paid for it. The street was built with tax money, but the right to charge for the use of that land can be sold. And once it can be sold again, packaged into a fund and held by investors who will never see the street. A parking meter is about 4 feet tall. It costs a few dollars an hour. It is the most boring object on the block, and it is a piece of a billion-dollar asset class. Carl Maggi built a device to move cars along. 90 years later, it's a 75-year annuity. The curb outside your door is the same story. Somebody owns the right to it. Usually it's the city. Increasingly, it isn't. Next time you feed a meter, the question worth asking isn't how much. It's who. This is Curbside Economics. There's a lot more infrastructure hiding money in plain sight, and I'm working through all of it. Subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one. Content.